we're at Laguna Seca, and you know, Laguna Seca is a great break for me from Pebble Beach because Pebble Beach is sort of business. As much as I'm enjoying it and I just love the cars, it's business. Laguna Seca is off to the side. It's cars and everything, but I can wander through here and enjoy cars for an entirely different reason. I love cars being used, and this is where you come to see absolutely insane owners driving $5 million Ferraris around the track going as fast as they can. That's pretty cool. Every year, Janice and I make the pilgrimage to Pebble Beach, which is in Monterey, California, and is a week just completely consumed with great exotics and classic cars and, oh, just car people. The Monterey Motorsports Weekend at Laguna Seca is just an amazing event. There's over 500 cars competing on the track, and they're chosen for their originality and their provenance. Oh, look at that, there's Old Yeller. Wow. This is something I recognize. I've seen this car around for years.
Yes, we've had it over 24 years.
Oh, so each time I've seen it, you've been the owner.
Yes.
You can always see some amazing cars at Laguna Seca, but the car that I've just run into is really special. It's Old Yeller 2. And this is a car that Carroll Shelby drove and Dan Gurney drove, was a foundation piece for many ideas that followed on. Old Yeller 2 was built by Max Balchowski. Max was a racing driver who had a reputation for doing engine swaps in racing cars. So he ended up with a Jaguar transmission, Buick brakes, and a Pontiac suspension. When Old Yeller hit the tracks, it just blew people away.
I was a friend of Max Balchowski, and he built this car in 1959.
So this is the original. This isn't a replication of it?
Yes. In other words, it's all the things that Max had, and this participated in the biggest races held in America.
Yeah.
And
so basically, it's a little home-built car makes good.
yeah, I think
literally a giant killer. This homemade American inspiration went out and embarrassed Ferrari and Maserati and a lot of the other European manufacturers. It's a very successful car.
It beat all the factory team cars, and Dan Gurney raced it twice. He broke the track record. Carroll Shelby raced it twice. He broke the track record.
Old Yeller changed hands quite a few times, but in 1974, she went out to pasture. In 1989, Ernie got her and restored her, and he's still running. Jimmy Shine is a well-known Southern California hot rodder, and he's working with Ernie now.
Working with Ernie Nagamatsu, Old Yeller, I mean, what a fantastic car.
Yeah, and you've got your hands on it.
And yeah, for me and my crew to actually be able to, be given the honor of working on this car, and also the responsibility that goes with it.
Well, there is that too.
I've been able to drive the car around our building just to do some testing before we take it to the track, but just driving around our building and a little bit on the street, maybe. Shh, don't tell anybody.
No, I would never.
But the car is just amazing. I mean, just the response, the braking, the steering. If you think back when this was built in 1958, just how advanced Max Balchowski was with his engineering. It's an all-tubular chassis. The suspension is tunable.
Which is really unusual for that day and age.
It was amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
The neat thing about Max was that he was not only an engineer, but a driver. The car dominated.
Well, it's been put together by a guy who's smart and is trying not to kill himself.
Well, I think that goes for many of us as well. But it's an automotive eye candy in history, speed, and power.
That's
Does it get any better?
No. It's very exciting to me that Ernie has still got this car at Laguna Seca and he's still campaigning this car around the world. I mean, that's just amazing.
Well, I knew Max very well. He didn't want any trophies at the drag races. He broke every record and he left all the trophies for the other guys. But he only went to test the car. Hot rodder mentality. We can make anything, they will. And if it broke, they'll make it durable. Well, I think that spirit represents everything America started out to be, we can do it, we can make it, and we can be better.
Ernie's 81. This morning, he took out Old Yeller. This afternoon, he's running his Cobra, which is a real Cobra. And boy, I hope I'm still running high-performance stuff when I'm 81.
So what we have is a 1951 Pontiac. It was brought in by the customer for a few upgrades. Some of the jobs we do here, we do full restorations right back to concourse. This one's hot rodded. So this is something like a resto mod type of thing. Somebody put a newer motor in it. It would have originally came with a flathead 6. This one has a 396 big block in it. And we upgraded his transmission to a 6-speed transmission so he can get better fuel mileage. And he decided that he would go ahead and get the paint and chrome and everything else fixed up on it at the same time. Some of the work that was done was homemade type of things. There were some van seats put in it, which he didn't like. Things that you would do in your backyard that might not be done in a restoration shop. We put a set of Recaro bucket seats in here. It's going to give him the support that he needs. We're redoing all the interior so it gives him that resto mod feeling. The resto mod is having the old car, but having a hell of a lot more power and making it an enjoyable ride. And that's what's the great thing about a hot rod. You can take them, strip them down, build them up, and hot rod them.
That's it. Good, guys. Thank you.
And this is what this gentleman wants. He wants to go fast. He wants comfort, reliability. It's going to be a completely different car for him, really, when he gets it back.
Okay, so let's check that old drive shaft we have. I believe it's right here.
Ron is going to put the drive shaft in this 51 Pontiac. And we need to get the slip yoke in to check and make sure that this drive shaft that came out of it is going to fit back into it. We've ordered a new yoke, so it mates with the drive shaft. He's going to set it up in there and see if it fits. Oh, sweet.
I'm gonna bang this U-joint out of there and bang that yoke off of there and... Oh, this is a factory drive shaft. It's still got the goo in there. So I gotta heat this drive shaft up because the U-joint's held in place by this glue that General Motors decided to use. So heat it up, smoke the stink, and pound this U-joint out of here. GM, instead of putting clips from the factory, they just have a molten plastic of some kind in that holds the U-joint in place. So heat it up, the plastic melts out, and then I can bang the U-joint out. Take this ugly thing out of there. I just gotta clean that up now, let it cool off.
It's a truck, it really is. It drives like a big 27 Buick would drive.
I'm not sure if the drive shaft is going to fit back in.
So the diameter of the cups is different.
Ron's going to put the drive shaft in the 51 Pontiac. I'm not sure if the drive shaft is going to go back in.
This because I'm going from a Ford slip yoke to a General Motors Chevy drive shaft. So the diameter of the cups is different. Hey, Darren, did that U-joint come in for the Pontiac?
Yep, I got it right here for you.
Perfect, thank you. So we ordered a special U-joint that has dual-size cups. Here we go. What we have here, we got the engine and the transmission, and you're trying to transmit the power from the transmission to the rear differential with using a drive shaft. And the drive shaft can't be solidly mounted because you have suspension moving up and down. So it has to flex. You have to have some give in between. So you have to have a universal joint. You can see how I can turn it and the angle will change. It'll still be able to transfer the power. So with the U-joints here, we can move this section and it would allow the drive shaft to move up and down with the suspension and still be able to transfer the torque to the rear axle.
Next on the agenda for the Pontiac, we're going to get the exhaust hooked up. It's got some header adapters there. We're going to put those on.
That's what we need.
Perfect.
Well, what we're doing is trying to figure out the best way to get the header hooked up to the rest of the exhaust system. When the car originally came in, it had exhaust manifolds on it, and the exhaust was hooked up to the exhaust manifolds right through the car. Now, we've installed headers on the engine, so now the exhaust comes out at a different location than they did before.
It's going to be tight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it'll come up and over this way a little bit and then out.
Yeah.
We have to fabricate a pipe to move over and around the cross member that's in the way.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet. Sweet.
You can always see some amazing cars at Laguna Seca. I mean, you walk around a corner and there's Bugattis, and then you've got Corvettes. I mean, you're getting the entire spectrum of the history of racing all in one place. There's something about these old race cars that really appeals to me. They're just basically a simple ladder-style chassis with an engine shoved on it, and there's a little bit of coach work put on it just to aid airflow, and sometimes not even. There's maybe an engine cover and then just open seats. It's a beautiful old 26 or 27 Buick. It's got, I think, a more recent engine in it. You got a lot of weight up here.
Yes.
And what size motor is it?
It's born 320 cubic inches.
Oh.
It's a truck. It really is.
Yeah.
It drives like a big 27 Buick would drive.
Yeah.
I mean, just because the body's not on it.
It might be a bit of a handful, but boy, it's an awfully good-looking handful, isn't it?
It started life as a 1927 Buick Roadster. We don't know the exact history, but somewhere in the late 30s, it was raced as what we call fairgrounds or a junkyard car, whatever. You know, the local guys would get something at the junkyard and go race it at the fairgrounds. That was all the tracks they were. I've had it for 18 years, well worth it. So I would have never guessed 30 years ago I'd be doing something like this.
What kind of speed are you getting on?
You know, I'm probably running 60 and 70 on the end of the straightaways. I could run a little harder. It's my first time here at this track with this car, and I took it easy. I just went out and followed the guys around. I could probably run in the high 80s, up at 90 on the straightaways. Yeah, it's got more horsepower than these tires can handle.
Sanding after a paint job. Most people look at it and say, you know, what are you doing? Sanding after a paint job. Most people look at it and say, holy, you know, what are you doing? So what we have is a 1971 LT1 Corvette, and it's really something to bring back because it is a high-performance 350 LT1 four-speed car, chrome bumper, it's collectible, and it's beautiful. This is no ordinary paint job. The customer has requested a perfect paint job. So Mel is actually sanding the paint. Well, not really the paint, he's sanding the clear coat. Most paint shops, it's in, it's painted, it's sent out. The high-end paint job comes with the wet sanding, buffing, and polishing the paint to a high luster. So it's gonna look deeper, it's gonna look richer, it's gonna look fantastic.
I'm cutting and polishing. I just painted the car, but you always get a bit of dust or orange peel. If you look here, it's bumpy, looks like orange skin. That's called orange peel. So I want to sand it smooth and then polish it up shiny again. Just make it perfect, so there's no imperfections at all.
So what grit of paper are you using now?
I'm using 1200, and I finish it off with 2000.
By the time you get down to 2,000 grit, you can't see it by eye, and by the time it's buffed out with a good compound, there shouldn't be any swirl, scratch marks, or anything left in it. And how long does the average?
The whole car, I could spend anywhere 30, 40 hours on it.
It's gonna take him hours and hours to do it, but without doing this, you don't have that show quality paint job. Like most people would see the spots that he hasn't done yet and go, wow, that looks fantastic. Mel's still looking at it going, nah, I need to buff and polish it. Every car that Mel does is almost perfect. He's a perfectionist. He's our Michelangelo with his eye and what he wants to see leave. That's the way it has to be done. He has to go through it and buff it, sand it, bring it up to a luster that we can all be proud of when it leaves the door. And this is what you get when you get a high-quality paint job. You get this finish on it that looks 2 feet deep.
Brabham.
Brabham, right.
This is the antimatter of Lotus.
Yes.
Exhaust bends, especially if you're not working from a template, can be complicated.
So on the 51 Chieftain, I finished the left side exhaust and I needed more pipe. So I've got that ordered, it's in. I'm gonna do the right side now. Now I just have to put some bends in and attach the original exhaust to the new headers. We've been waiting for some exhaust bends, 2.5-inch J bends they're called. If you were building something, you needed to move the pipe over, out of that shape, the J of the pipe, we can cut the sections we need out of it, get the angles we need to complete the exhaust system. We can take one and cut it, turn it, weld it, and change the angle completely. I'm gonna consult Al here to see what he thinks. Yeah, well, I wanted Al to give me a hand, his opinion on what I was trying to do. I've only done this a couple of times, so I'm new at it, and Al's a metal fabricating guru. I want to come out and do the same thing here pretty well, right?
Exactly.
So we got to come out. How are we doing this? So what do you think?
Just put a straight edge on here and see where it hits, and we'll measure the distance from this wall to this wall, and then exhaust bends, especially if you're not working from a template or a plan with an exhaust bender, can be kind of complicated. We need to jog over 2 inches.
We needed to move the pipe over 2 inches, come out of the header, angle over 2 inches, and come out to meet the exhaust.
I'm eyeballing this straight out until I get 1/2 inch. That roughly puts my cut right here.
And cut it, lop it off there.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's little tricks that you can use to figure out what your bends are going to be, where to cut the bends to get them to flow all together. Sort of cut everything a little bit long, tack it together, make sure it works. That's a pretty tight radius right there.
Yeah.
You can add a little material to this so it goes on the full length.
Yeah.
Because if you mess up with that, you can break a tack easily, grind a little bit off, file a bit off, put it together.
That's confusing. Yeah? Oh, okay.
So you get it to line up with both angles.
Yeah.
When you're making semi-complicated bent parts, it's really easy to get hung up on what the angles are. Start at the beginning of the bend, so that'll be that wall, that cut. You know, you've got a 60-degree angle here, or 70-something degree angle. None of that really actually matters. You don't have to know what the number is, but you do have to have everything connected properly. And that's it.
Jump. Jesus.
So now you don't have to do a bunch of complicated math and fitting and stuff like that.
You know, he just looked his eyeball in, his experience, and he had a couple of protractors. He helped a great deal, Al.
We just had to sort of connect the dots, but you want to have nice, smooth curves that flow into one another so you don't restrict the exhaust, because every time you have a bend, you have to have both the correct angle on the bend, and you have to clock the bend around so that everything routes itself through properly. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. But you really want to take your time, tack it, check it, tack it, check it, tack it, tack it, tack it, tack it, check it again, and then weld it all when you know that it's all proper.
So once I got everything tacked into position and put it back on the car and made sure it was going to fit properly, then I completed the weld right around the whole pipe. Oh. Looks good. Turned out quite well. I'm really happy on how it worked out, especially when we're trying to hook up to an old exhaust system. It's sort of looking like it's going in the general direction. Yeah, I'm happy with the way it is.
Hey, Brabham.
Brabham, right.
This is the antimatter of Lotus.
Yes.
I know lots about Brabhams because Brabhams were sort of the dark matter in the world of racing. There was Lotus and there was Brabham. And those two were very keen competitors.
Brabham was the largest manufacturer of open-wheel racing cars in the 60s.
Yep.
They made over 500 open-wheel. This is a rare closed wheel. They didn't like making closed-wheel cars.
And I wonder why that was, because I mean, they were good at it. This is an amazing car. It's really neat because Brabhams are very rare and Lotuses aren't, you know, especially an enclosed wheel Brabham like this one.
There were 12 made,
Yeah.
and this is one of the more famous and successful. This is the four-cylinder incline Climax. This is the same model engine that won the 1959 and 60 World Championship with Jack Brabham in the Cooper. Same engine, it's 2.5-liter inline, double overhead valve, side draft carburetors. It's a classic engine designed in the 50s from a fire engine pump.
Was that right?
20 horsepower fire engine pump they used in World War II.
It's a pretty spectacular car. And the chap who owns it now, he's only had it for 4 months. He's still teething on it. And that's got to be such a huge amount of fun to have something like this and be teaching yourself the limits that the car has without going over those limits.
I just have to build up confidence in this car.
Yeah.
I know it wants me to, and I
See,
know
if you
it
were
can do it.
19, you wouldn't have to build up that confidence. You
I
just
know.
do it, right?
I know.
So,
Yeah, just
'cause-
do it.
Yeah, see, you've gotten smarter in life. That's good. Racing vintage and antique race cars, it's an expensive proposition, there's no doubt. But it's something that's achievable. These cars, some of them are just maintained by the guys who drive them. And there's a real appeal to that because they're simple and they're clever and they're just an awful lot of fun.